it's maintaining and being active and staying to what you know, and the lessons you've learned since before COVID in the younger that you know the levels at which you can push. And that's probably the important message we need to say as well, is just
Definitely.
because you got pregnant is not a good time to start training for marathons or start taking up running, but definitely just maintaining some sort of active lifestyle on par with what you've done.
Absolutely. And that's actually what the doctor said to me. She was like, if you're fit enough to run a marathon now, you can run a marathon now, but don't increase weights. Like if you're in the gym, don't increase distance. Don't be trying to get personal best. So just like maintenance and then pulling back where you feel like you need to pull back as well.
You were talking about like it was old folklore that you can't do running and training like that, but it's mad. It's only like 50 years, which is not that long ago, that like there was men in Boston trying to stop women from actually running the marathon, because if they ran a marathon, you won't be able to get pregnant. I'm hesitant to say this, I'm not too sure if it's definitely fact, but like your uterus would fall. Not that it's fact, but they'd say your uterus would fall out if you were trying to run a marathon, stuff like that. Having said that, when you started this episode of the podcast, you talked about not being pushed to doing running clubs and stuff like that. And they have an initiative now for women to, if you do the half marathon in Dublin, they can get access to do the full marathon, that 48-hour window, same as someone to go through it. And I had read before that up to 40% of women did Dublin Marathon. But then, according to marathonguide.com, there was 16,000 or so finishers of the marathon this past year in 2023 in Dublin. 11,000 of them were men, and only 5,200 of them were female. And why such the huge gap in your opinion?
I know it's something I've thought about a lot, and it became much more stark to me when I actually ran the marathon myself, because I'd look around and I was like, there's all men, do you know, like there'd be like 7 men around me and then like maybe one woman. I'd say it's multifaceted, it's deep rooted. I don't think there's one logical answer or
Like,
one right answer.
can we go back to the likes of school? You mentioned that point earlier
Yeah.
where it's like, we're just not interested. People weren't interested in doing it. The competitive nature for the girls in school didn't really exist, or it was uncool to go running, or
Yeah.
like are we talking like it's a grassroots level that maybe is where the problem is, or
Yeah, like I'm 31, so maybe not so much anymore. But I think there was the girls in school who were sporty, but they were the girls who like did hockey, mainly who did hockey in my school. I know it obviously changes depending on what school you're in. And then like there was girls who were into different sports, say like outside of school. But unless you were someone who was like really, really good at sport, it's not that it wasn't encouraged. I don't think that's fair to say that it wasn't encouraged, but I think it's actually really subtle how much, as when we were growing up, you're not pushed into sports. It was like the boys do sports, and the girls might go to the gym. And that might sound mad to maybe younger people listening now, because I remember even when we all started going to the gym when we were maybe like 15, 16, it was a kind of like new agey kind of women starting to go to the gym, which again sounds crazy even coming out of my mouth because it's so normal now. But I think from a very young age, you're not really encouraged unless you're like a super athlete, or unless you're like noticeably insanely fast or insanely good at something. You're kind of just like, oh yeah. Whereas it seems like all boys at most, like at one stage or another, play sports, even if they're not that great. And it's just different for women. And it's the same with like when you go to college, like the lads have like football teams or rugby teams, and like the girls just don't. So I think there's that. I think there's that. And then I also think that like, because that's kind of ingrained, I do think as well, and I don't know if this is like okay to say, but I
all
think
right, I won't edit it out, it's fine.
I think I think from when you're young, and I can only speak from my personal experience, but like being sporty was almost considered masculine. And like it was
Yeah,
considered
right.
masculine to be sporty. Like that's just the
The
way that we grew up.
butch girl playing sport. Yeah, yeah,
Your
Exactly.
tomboy was the phrase used,
yeah.
like it was, yeah.